Welcome back, folks, to another installment of Torts. Back in the basement of Drake Law School Law Library. We're going to go over assault. And before we go over it, this is a very messy board because after I wrote this, I remembered that this is the first case we have to go over. And so the order of which is really messy, but just follow, and it should be more clear. So, assault. We go from battery to assault, and for battery, right, we looked at the purpose, and it's to protect bodily autonomy and integrity. And there we recall that kind of offensive touch with anger in your heart could count as battery, right? And that contact and harm by the reasonable person standard, or actual harm, which is more obvious, it could be battery itself, right? And not only that, but invasion of your space or something that something offensive to something intimately personal to you could also count as battery. And so before battery, I guess you could end up in assault. And so I think a lot of cases, assault and battery come kind of hand in hand. I suppose they could be separate. I can't really think of a scenario right now, but with more time probably. But assault, the purpose of this one is to protect your state of mind. And if you can kind of imagine that purpose, you can kind of imagine what might count as assault. And so if the purpose is to protect your state of mind, then potentially compromising that state of mind by maybe intimidating somebody or maybe threatening somebody are like the predictions that would come to mind when thinking about the purpose, right? And if you thought that, you'd be kind of right, as I am kind of right, but also kind of wrong because I'm just a 1L. And some examples of this is imminent threats and harm. And the first case to kind of showcase this, and in my notes I wrote that this case is the granddaddy of assault cases. And IDS EU V the WDS. It is in 1348 in England. And the facts, pretty simple. The case itself in the book is like a paragraph, 2 paragraphs long. But in short, W, the defendant, the alleged assaulter, he goes up to this tavern trying to get some wine, and it's closed. And so what he chooses to do is I'm guessing he's drunk. And he gets his hatchet, because he just had a hatchet, and he starts, slicing at the door. The wife of the tavern owner peeks out, sees W, and he continues to hack and slash at this door. And then, if homeboy was at your home whacking at your door, had no reason to whack at the door, I would be pretty scared. And, the wife in this instance was pretty scared. I mean, so scared enough that she, because it's old and sexist at the time, I don't think she sued. I think her husband sued on behalf of her. But essentially, she sued for assault. And I don't know the history about this, but I think if you're going to call it the granddaddy of assault cases, that it may be first impression here. But the big key point here is no harm was actually done. I mean, he didn't actually get inside the house and, attack, husband or wife. And the holding of this case said that, well, it is actually assault, that you're going to get damages for the harm that was done. And so we see kind of like the floor of where assault can be, that fear of imminent harm is enough to count as assault. So now we have in our head an idea of where it may start, okay? And so going from where it will start, we move on to the next case. Similarly, this one's in the United States. To illustrate a point, is in 1933, a case called Western Union Telegraph Co. versus Hill. And this case is this one's a case where a dude named Sap, he was working for golly, he was like a clock fixer. Like Hill was the wife of Hill at the time, and she worked at, I forgot where she worked. Did she work at the Western Union? Defendant appeals. Stay with me, y'all. So was the agent defendant and the manager of the Telegraph company. Okay, so I think she was working for Western Union, and that they had like a deal where, you know, if something goes wrong with their clocks, they take it into somewhere else in which they get it fixed for them. And so Hill, the woman, she goes in to, I think it was here. Okay, I'm really botching these facts, but he goes in and she asked for to fix his clock, to fix her clock, and I think he was a little inebriated at the time. At the edge of the counter, and it's important to the case to know that the counter is kind of long, and that, you know, reaching over is not necessarily like it's kind of in question how plausible it is for him to actually, you know, reach over and grab or touch another person on the other side. But effectively, she comes in, asks for the clock to get fixed. Sap says from across the counter, "Come around the corner and let me love and pet you. Then I'll fix your clock." And that is a euphemism for sexual assault, to be honest with you. And she is reasonably scared at that moment. And in the facts, he actually tries to reach over and grab her, but the table's too far. And so, you know, the testimony, it is important that he says that he couldn't have reasonably ever actually grabbed her. And I think she contests that. I think he was close enough to where if he like jumped over or whatnot. But essentially, the holding of this case is that, well, because it was actually kind of reasonable to believe that he could go over and grab her, that the imminent fear was reasonable. And that's a big part of this. That if it was too long, for instance, right, I'm off camera, if this was too long, and there's, you know, you look at it and there's kind of no way that he could actually reach over and grab her, it might go a different way, this case. Yoda says. But because it was actually kind of reasonable that he comes out and grabs, that the court said, because of that, I think they remanded it, they reversed it. They actually reversed it, yeah. To say that because of that, it was assault, right? And that the holding essentially here is that an intentional, unlawful offer to touch in an offensive manner that creates a well-founded fear. This is the key word here. Because of that distance of the counter, it was a well-founded fear of imminent battery. That counts as an assault. And so, again, little key thing is that we still use what? We still use that reasonable person standard or the objective standard. And so, you know, subjectively she believed it, but we also had to look at it from, you know, the reasonable person. This is not my best video, so I apologize. I'm not going to edit this. Thanks for sticking with me.